Hi, everyone. Welcome to our program, the Global Professional Fellowship in Green Urban Innovation and Social Entrepreneurship. And today we are starting with the first module, which is entitled Policy, Governance, and Sustainability Foundations, Navigating the Legal Environments Conducive to Execution, the three pillars, social, environmental, economic, and net zero implications for industry. So I am inviting now Ms. Michelle Thatcher to deliver some opening remarks, where this program is being organized jointly by the Global Ambassadors of Sustainability, the Global Green Chamber of Commerce, and the Environmental Awareness Initiative at the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So the floor is yours, Ms. Michelle.
Thank you, Dr. Wassam, and welcome everyone. As you can see, we have an amazing lineup of speakers, so I'm going to keep this introduction very short, but we have speakers from Brunei, Lebanon, St. Lucia, UK, UAE, and Cyprus. And this particular series that's brand new, and we hope that you'll share this with others out there, because when you finish the 12-part series, you will receive a full certification, Global Professional Fellowship. And this was accredited by 56 experts from 38 countries. And you can see this is what Dr. Wassam had covered, and just some key takeaways of why you want to continue to stay here with us today. You're going to learn about how sustainability as the systems change, governments must bridge SDG commitments and real outcomes. Net zero is an economic and governance transformation, and resilience requires diversification. Those are just a few of the highlighted key takeaways. There's many more. And then you will also learn very key action items about like evaluating how sustainability policy can impact your sector, apply the 3 pillars in the framework for your work and decision making, as well as integrating long-term sustainable thinking into your strategic planning. Again, this is the very first one, so we're very high level, and we want you to stay with us here today. And for those who are joining us on LinkedIn, we know that we have a global audience, so we want you to share your thoughts and reactions here. Please, if you haven't done so already, share your location, that city and country if you can. And we want you to ask questions for each and every person who is here. And keep in mind that this is an open, inclusive, and uplifting dialogue. So just keep that in mind when you're dropping in comments and or questions. And I want to I didn't create a slide for this, but just, giving a moment of pause. There's a lot of conflict in the world right now, and we just give a moment of pause to give peace, love, and kindness out there to the world. And to continue that, to give that peace and strength to our speakers today. And I will pass it back to you, Dr. Wassam, to introduce our first speaker.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. And we start our webinar, our program, with the first speaker, Ms. Kritika Gennaro. And Ms. Kritika, she is Environment and Sustainability Officer at Aston University from the UK. So the floor is yours, Ms. Kritika.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Dr. Wassam, for introducing me. Hello, everyone. I'm Kritika, and I work as an Environment and Sustainability Officer for Aston University. Today, I'm going to take you through certain fundamentals of sustainability, why it matters, how the policy is a driving factor towards the real-world action, and how it is very different but practical approach to what we need at the moment. So, why does sustainability matter? These are the articles which I've got from different sources, one of which says how the target for the net zero has been pushed far further and further, keeping in mind the financial barriers that we have. There's a lot of pullback from the government in the UK, US as well when it comes to sustainability and whether or the investment is important or not. There are a lot of restrictions on the part of climate related disasters. We are seeing a lot of insurers pulling back from the countries when it comes to climate disasters. And also the fact that sustainability is now not just about the businesses or the NGOs who are trying to push forward their action, but also about the government that needs to take a big action on this. So why does it matter? It matters because it is not something extra. It's about how businesses have become more riskier, how the social expectations have increased, how the governance has become more of a responsibility. Stakeholders, right from the students, consumers, investors, and everyone, is now expecting something more responsible, more climate conscious, and transparent. So the basics of sustainability. Whenever you Google the word sustainability, the first thing that you'll see is something very green, something related to plantations, but it is far more complex than that. It's not straightforward, definitely requires a proper systematic thinking and a global view of process, because it's not just limited to an organization or an area or a country, but a understanding of the climate overall in the world. This obviously is very well defined by the Brundtland Report, which is issued by the United Nations in 1983, which says that the development that meets the needs of the present people without compromising the future, which in itself says anything that could put the risk put the planet at risk in the future just so that we can meet the needs of the present, is not sustainable, and something that we need to look at in order to uh, make the planet a better place to live. And the best way that they have explained this was the introduction of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which talks about every aspect in 17 different goals, right from poverty to human rights to climate action to development of the infrastructural facilities and everything else that is involved. And this is not just limited to the sustainable development goals, but also the approach towards looking at the natural resources, the financial resources, and the human resources, and not just the fact that climate is a place and humans and the businesses do not play a role. And hence, Sustainable Development Goals is a new introduction by the UN in order to explain it in a better manner. This United Nations development goals can also be approached in a framework of three pillars of sustainability, which talks about environment, economic, and social aspect. Environment being more about protecting the ecosystems, reducing carbons, reducing waste; social being equity, labor rights, community development, human rights, and everything else. While economic being more on the financial stability and the responsible investment that is needed at the current aspect that we are in. Now, how does the United Nations goals and the ESG coincide? Sustainability in general is an umbrella which could include everything in it, be it CSR, be it ESG, be it UN goals. But at the end of the day, it is about having all the three aspects being concluded, the human aspect, the nature aspect, and the business aspect into it. And this image, I have gotten it from the social from the platform, and I've realized that it very well depicts on how the United Nations act as a framework, but at the same time aligning with the three pillars of the society. Now, are the frameworks just enough for sustainability to be approached as a factor of business? No, we need a better policy, better governance to drive this. So, sustainability goals based on the ESG and the UN Sustainable Development Goals can set the direction, but the policies and governance will determine the actual outcomes that we do. So, strong governance are majorly needed because of the climate risk that is happening around, financial risk, and the investors' pressure that is rising, the reputation, the brand values, the goodwill that businesses want to earn, the voluntary action that we have majorly now more involved by the people about the rights, about climate in general. So, governance ensures that sustainability becomes part of decision making and not just greenwashing or marketing. And hence, policies are one of the major drivers. Now, when it comes to policy making, how do you determine what are the basis for which the policy should be based on, or the drivers under which it should be? The very first that any one of us can think of when it comes to sustainability is climate emergency or climate change. We are seeing the wildfires in Australia, the Antarctica being melted down as probably quicker than we can think of, and many other actions. We just had a hailstorm, a snow rain and sun within 1 hour in the UK. So these are the factors that can contribute to the climate change. Governments are introducing a very significant amount of investment into these. A lot of countries have their own net zero goals now. We have the net zero commitments that are more towards the greenhouse emissions becoming more frequent, and therefore it has become one of the most important aspect of sustainability for any government or organizations, one of which leading to the Paris Agreement that we have and the national climate targets of the countries. The second and one of the most underlying policy driver is liability issues. As I mentioned during the start of my slide, insurance companies are pulling away. There are a lot of issues that happened when there was a flood in the US and the wildfire, wherein the companies are now saying that they would never cover the climate related issues, and this is one of the very big breakdown for people living in areas which can get affected, and hence it is time for companies to start taking this seriously, for organizations and government to look after the climate change. The major one, and the major one being the financial support. We can be sustainable. There's a lot of things that are possible out there. There's a lot of innovation and AI. There's a lot of involvement from the different researchers. But one of the major drawback has been the financial support that is required to become sustainable. The US government did say that they would invest for the global capital around $130 trillion, and then it changed suddenly with the change of the government. There is a lot of pushback from the banks. Across the world, the aspect of ESG, a 10% contribution to the social value, has become very, very popular lately with the bank loans and the construction loans. There has been a lot of growth in the green bonds, renewable energy funds, sustainable finances, and there's a lot of pressure on the low carbon companies. There's a lot of push towards low carbon companies and the investment that's being done there. Hence, one of the major aspects to look at the sustainability aspect as well. Yet another aspect or the policy driver that we all can look for, and something that is more attractive than the real ones, is the brand value. We all know that it has become a very big thing to have a certification when an organization is run. You need consumers are willing to buy products that are sustainable. People are looking for things that can make make things look more refreshing, more that does not impact the environment, and hence a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, governments are trying to push more forward of sustainable products, sustainable businesses than the ones which are not. And one of the best part is getting the brand reputation for your company, while also making sure that when it comes to the education sector that I am in, a lot of students, a lot of employees are preferring to work in organization that looks after their people. And it's, as we mentioned, sustainability is not just about the green energy or carbon or environment, but also from the aspect of peace and well-being of the people. So that has become a very big brand value and a attractive part for a lot of organizations to include, and hence one of the major policy driver which we miss out on. At the end, I understand that's a lot of information, but the simplest information is that sustainability is environmental, financial, legal, and reputational requirement because of the pressures that companies are under right now. And the times are challenging and accelerating towards more stronger regulatory frameworks, more stronger understanding that if all of these aspects of sustainability are being imposed onto the organizations, whether or not they are rightfully done, whether there's a greenwashing happening or not, there are a lot of other aspects to it in continuation to the action that is being taken. Organizations have to embed sustainability now in a structure that is more of a decision making than just of a CSR node. And there is no way an organization can be fully sustainable. It's a big journey, and it's a gray area at the same time. But the collaborations within the disciplines, which are the most essential one, if you can see over here, this was one of the chart that World Economic Forum released, saying people now are willing to work only with the organizations which look after their people. And at the same time, there are a lot of other organizational, other technological upgrades that are available for companies to become net zero. We have a lot of people lined up to speak about it, but then you would never think that net zero would become important now more than ever. resilience on our electricity, on the gas supplies, reliance on the natural resources is very high. But the world that we live in, we are not sure how much of natural resources we are left with, or whether it would be available on and on. I was in India last week, and I noticed the amount of EV vehicles that have increased over there, and the reliance on EV that has increased. There was a very high surge in petroleum and gas due to the current situations, the political situations. And people actually understood the importance of having an alternative which is more sustainable. Obviously, there are its own aspects and factors, but uh, again, sustainability is not about becoming a green person or trying to do good for the society or volunteering, but it has become a need now, and hence it is one of the most important factor that needs to be considered by any organization or businesses or companies, to put it as a policy, as a governance framework. And there are a lot of other frameworks available which are based on CSRD, TCFD disclosures, the ESG investment regulations, and many more which could be looked up for. Ultimately, as I mentioned before, it's not straightforward. It requires a lot of work. There's a lot of frameworks that needs to be put into it. No one can ever be sustainable, not a company, not a human, not the planet, but we all can work towards making it much more livable, much more available for our future generations to come. And this can only happen when there's an engagement from all the sectors of the organizations, be it investors, communities, employees, individuals like us. And most challenging part is to be there, making sure we keep trying to do it as much as possible by including it as part of everyday business. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions about sustainability or the presentations over here. And if you want any information on the universities, I can give that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Kritika, for this interesting presentation. And we move now to the second speaker, Dr. Muhammad Shakib Kulsi. Dr. Muhammad is an associated professor of accounting and sustainability at the University of Dubai from the United Arab Emirates. So the floor is yours, Dr. Muhammad.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So I am Dr. Muhammad Kulsi, associate professor at the University of Dubai in accounting and sustainability. So today my presentation will be focused on the UAE experience in terms of sustainable development. I will focus on 3 key points. So first of all, I will define the 3 pillars or component of sustainability. Then I move forward to the UAE Net Zero 2050 strategy for net zero or carbon neutrality strategy. And finally, I will close with the ADX Abu Dhabi Securities Exchange SDGs or ESG disclosure guidance disclosed in 2019 and updated or revised in 2025. Okay, so I will start my presentation by a very good quotation extracted from the COP28 held in Dubai in 2023. So one of the participants said that Earth does not belong to us. We borrowed it from next generations. So I think this quotation is very important for us, and we must take into account that we have borrowed the Earth from next generation, so we should lend it later on. So this quotation was from the UN Climate Change Conference held in Dubai 2023, the COP28. Okay, as an introduction, in today's world, the balance between ecology, such as ecosystems and the environments, and the economy, the system of production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services has become one of the most pressing issues. So the challenge lies on achieving the economic development and while maintaining ecological integrity. And this balance is not easy to achieve. These 2 forces, economic growth and environmental sustainability, often appear to be in conflict, with industries prioritizing short-term profit maximizations at the cost of long-term ecological health. However, finding a middle ground is not possible, but necessary for the well-being of both future generations and the planet. So as a definition, the corporate social responsibility that companies adopting CSR practices voluntarily contribute to environmental sustainability. Businesses can integrate green practices into their business production processes, reduce carbon emissions, and invest in sustainable products. These efforts can increase profitability in the long run by fostering consumer loyalty and reducing operational costs. So here there is this figure represent how the 4 pillars of sustainability are interacting, or CSR, or how they interact. So there are 3 key factors or pillars or main pillars for sustainable development. The first pillar related to the environmental sustainability, when protecting natural resources, reducing pollution, mitigating climate change, and preserving biodiversity. This includes reducing carbon footprints, promoting renewable energy, and enhancing waste management. The second factor or main pillar of sustainable development is the economic sustainability, where ensuring that economies can grow while maintaining ecological balance. This involves promoting green technologies, encouraging sustainable business practices, and investing in clean energy. And finally, the social pillar of sustainability consists of addressing poverty, inequality issues between gender, males and females, and providing education and healthcare and well-being for all. So now move forward to the UAE Net Zero 2050 strategy. So the UAE Net Zero 2050 strategic initiative aligns with the Paris Agreement 2015 related to climate change, which calls on countries to prepare long-term strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and limit the rise in global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial levels. So the definition of UAE Net Zero 2050 strategy by the Minister of Climate Change and Environment in the UAE is as follows: powered by technology, innovation, research and development, the pathway is expected to bring significant gains in terms of job creation, GDP growth, and air quality. We are determined to walk the talk and take decisive measures to contribute to the global climate action so we can build a more sustainable and climate resilient future to our planet. So the pathway is projected to boost the national GDP from 1.8 to 3.8% by 2050, amounting to a total increase between 610 billion dirhams to 1 trillion 80 80,000 dirhams compared to 2019. It will also sustain an average of 200,000 jobs annually. So the pathway to achieve the UAE Net Zero strategy consists of 5 main steps. The first step is to establish a benchmarking to identify the best practices, of course, worldwide in the field of similar and developed countries. The second step of the pathway is to establish an emission baseline, assessing the impact of the existing national strategies in the sectors of energy, water, demand management, waste management, and industry on emission reductions until 2050. The third step of the pathway is to develop a model for estimating greenhouse gas emissions and conducting modeling exercises. The fourth step consists of compiling a list of priority mitigation measures. And finally, the UAE Net Zero Strategy 2050 is to formulate scenarios for achieving net zero or carbon neutrality by 2050, of course. So the UAE authorities have also identified several enablers for empowering the ecosystem required for the UAE Net Zero 2050 strategy to thrive. This includes implementation of climate finance mechanisms, and all of us know that during the COP28, at the first time of the United Nations initiatives or forums for the climate change, so there was established a huge fund to combat climate change. So second is the development of new technologies supported by research and development. And the third enabler is to establish a dynamic upskilling and capabilities plan. It has over 25 programs across the following six key sectors, including power sector, industry, transportation, building, resilient building, waste management, and technological agriculture, or technology in agriculture. The programs will focus on enhancing efficiency, expanding the use of renewable energy sources, implementing sustainable transportation, and the green building practices. So as we know, now in Dubai, it will be soon for testing the flying taxi. So the flying taxi is one innovation and is considered as a sustainable mean of transportation that will be tested soon. Incorporating nature-based solutions and employing carbon capture technologies. So these are the three enablers that have been identified by the UAE authorities to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2050. So as an example, typical example in the United Arab Emirates is the University of Dubai. So the University of Dubai has successfully attained the net zero carbon footprint since 2023. So setting it as an inspiring example for other universities to aspire to achieve this milestone in the future. In this way, now the University of Dubai fully generating its electricity by the solar panel installed in the parking area and in the land surrounding the university. So 100% now is consisting of clean energy, and it is one of the first universities in the region to do so. Finally, in the 2019, the Abu Dhabi Securities Exchange has disclosed or issued their ADX ESG disclosure guidance for listed companies in 2019. This guidance was revised in June 2025. So the ADX issued its ESG disclosure guidance updated June 25 to support sustainability reporting journey for listed companies. This guidance was published to support voluntary disclosure of ESG information. So the voluntary guidance provides ADX listed company with 31 ESG indicators or KPIs. It is inspired by Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative, the GRI Initiative, Global Reporting Initiative, and the United Nations Social Development Goals. So here, for example, the environmental metrics issued by the ADX ESG disclosure guidance. So we display here the metrics such as greenhouse gas emissions, emission intensity, energy usage, energy intensity, energy mix energy, waste or water usage, how to calculate each metric or item, and what is the corresponding GRI standard. For example, we have the GRI number 305, 305, 302, 302, 303. So here I display a comparison between the ADX ESG guidance and the GRI standards. So while the purpose of ADX ESG guidance is to encourage ESG disclosure by companies listed on the ADX, Abu Dhabi Securities Exchange, so the GRI provide the global sustainability reporting standards. The scope for ADX ESG is primary UAE listed companies. However, for the GRI is the global organization across all sectors. So for the ADX is the guidance framework. For the GRI, the comprehensive reporting standards. So the ADX ESG guidance encompasses 3 ESG KPIs. However, the GRI encompasses hundreds of topic and specific disclosures. So the ESG guidance is relatively simple and introductory. However, the GRI standards are highly detailed and comprehensive. And finally, the ESG of ADX guidance is aligned with GRI and SDGs, but the GRI standards are independent global reporting framework. Again, a comparison between the ADX ESG metrics with the SDGs. So for the environmental pillar, so we can compare or we can find the relationship with SDG number 7, clean energy, responsible consumption, climate action. For the social pillar, we have workforce and community sub-pillars. So the related SDGs are good health, SDG number 3, SDG number 5, gender equality, SDG 8, decent work. For the governance pillar, board diversity, anti-corruption, and transparency, so we can match with the SDG number 16, peace, justice, strong institutions. Finally, for the economic impact, so we can relate this to SDG number 9, industry and innovation, and number 8, economic growth. Here there is a comparison or a pathway between the ADX ESG, how to immigrate or how to shift from ESG disclosure guidance and the ESG pillars of the GRI initiative, and finally with the how they can match with the Sustainable Development Goals SDGs. As a conclusion, we can note that the United Arab Emirates presents a pioneering model in integrating sustainability into national policies through ambitious initiatives in the renewable energy, sustainable transportation, housing, education, scientific and technological research. These efforts serve as an example of creating balance between economic development and environmental protection or sustainability. However, some challenges may exist, such as water scarcity in the full region of the GCC region, accelerated climate change, and global warming. Nevertheless, the country continues to expand its programs and update its regulatory frameworks, such as the ESG disclosure guidance, which was issued in 2019, but updated 2025, its regulatory frameworks to accelerate the transition to a green economy. Among the most important future aspirations of the country are achieving the carbon neutrality by 2050 and shifting from fossil fuel energy, enhancing research and innovation in the field of sustainability, encouraging active community participation in daily sustainability practices. And finally, thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Mohammed, for the informative presentation. And we move now to the third speaker, Ms. Razan Asi. And Ms. Razan, she's a PhD researcher at the Lebanese University in Lebanon. So the floor is yours, Ms. Razan.
Good evening, doctors. Good evening, Dr. Wissam, Dr. Michelle. Thank you for this amazing opportunity. Starting by policy governance as the foundation for sustainable development and implementation. For the introduction, sustainable development is no longer a theoretical concept. It's more a global policy framework guiding national policies. Through many agreements, such as Paris Climate Agreement, UN 2030 Agenda, have committed to ambitious sustainability targets. But despite that, major challenges persist, such as weak implementation, fragmented institutions, poor coordination among actors. So here is the important role of the policy governance, because it's central to sustainability, starting from strategic ambition to operational action. So therefore, in this presentation, I will explain why governance is the structural foundation for achieving the sustainable development pathway. Starting by a short introduction about policy governance. Policy governance is a system that ensures public policy are designed, coordinated, and monitored effectively. It includes laws, regulation, government institution, public participation, and we should respect among that 5 main principles, such as the laws are clear, public, and equally applied to everyone. Transparency means that government decisions are open, clear, and accessible to everyone. It gives citizens access to information on policies, budgets, and regulations. Effectiveness and efficiency means that policies achieve their goals and produce measurable results. Participation means involving citizens and stakeholders in public decision-making. And finally, public policies must benefit all members of society and reducing inequalities. Going to the main question, why is policy governance the foundation of sustainability? Sustainable development is built on three main pillars, such as economic, social, and environmental. So without strong institution, regularity, quality, sustainability strategies, these pillars or sustainable development pathway remains on paper. So here, we need strong institutions, clear laws, and coordinated public action. Because countries with well-functioning governance system generally achieve better development outcomes or better sustainable development pathways. For example, at economic sustainability level, it requires legal certainty, regularity, stability, and effective institutions that can support market, investment, and long-term growth. At social sustainability, it depends on policies that are inclusive, provide equal access to services, protect human rights, and reduce inequalities. And for environmental sustainability, it relies on enforceable environmental law, monitoring system, and compliance mechanism to safeguard natural resource and ecosystem. Besides that, for international agreement, it should be translated into national laws to have real impact, to have the real structure for sustainable development. So governance ensures that policies are consistent across sectors, coordinated over time, and able to adapt to emerging challenges. How about the link between governance or policy governance and legal environment? As I said before, sustainability depends on strong legal and regulatory systems. Governance works through law, regulation, and institutional mandates that guide public and private action. So having a clear legal framework, it will ensure stability, predictability, and effective policy implementation. So environmental protection require enforceable or real legal standards. Also, as I said, regularity, quality, and policy coherence are key to effective governance. We have main principles for good governance, such as rule of law and strong legal institutions that are essential for sustainable development or environmental sustainability. Global agreement like the Paris Agreements must be translated into national law, and good governance ensures legal systems support long-term sustainability, not just short-term interest. As I said, we need to translate some international agreements into our national laws, into policies, such as 2030 Agenda have recognized the importance of policy governance, the importance of institutions that are essential for sustainable development, the importance of effective and inclusive governance system, the importance of regularity framework and enforcement mechanism, a stable legal and institutional environment, inclusive and participatory governance, also accountability systems. So governance reform strengthen implementation capacity across all sustainability pillars. So without effective governance, it remains commitments rather than measurable results. Okay, at the end, sustainable development need more than global commitments. It requires effective system to implement them. It provides the structures, law, and accountability mechanism needed for action. It ensures the quality, credibility, and measurable result. A strong legal system that will give clarity, stability, and enforcement capacity. And governance link and balance the three pillars between the three pillars. So both the 2030 Agenda and many agreements rely on inclusive, accountable, and effective institution, effective policy governance. So without governance reform and strong institution, it will remain ambitious, not real outcome. So with this governance foundation in mind, I now invite my colleague to explore further how these principles operate across the three pillars and the net zero pathway. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Razan, for this interesting presentation. And now we move to the fourth speaker. And we are having Ms. Zoraida Hussein. Ms. Zoraida, she is a consultant of sustainability, governance, and diplomacy
and she's also the Vice President of the Red Cross in Brunei. So the floor is yours, Ms. Zoraida.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wissam, and dear esteemed colleagues, speakers, for my presentation. I think I would like to applaud the previous speakers for whatever they have said, because there is a lot of commonality in the concepts of trying to achieve sustainability across the board. But then let me share Brunei Darussalam's perspective on this. And if I may, I shall actually give you a short country overview. So basically, Brunei Darussalam is actually a very, very small country. It does say there 450,000 people, but then we are actually now at 470,000 people, which I think in some countries is just a province or is just a city. But then there it is, we have 470,000 people. Our economy is actually very much based on hydrocarbons. We are an oil-producing country. And we have an absolute monarchy as our governance. And we also are driven by the Brunei policy, Brunei Vision 2035, which I shall explain later. And we are also strategically placed in ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations in Southeast Asia. So if I can go now to the MIB framework. So basically the MIB framework is actually based on Melayu Islam Beraja, which is actually Malay Muslim monarchy. So basically that's actually because we have an absolute monarchy in place, and it has been in place for 650 years. So actually there we have a sort of continuity in terms of governance. We are also based on Islamic law and values. And we are also based on Malay identity, where 70% of the population is actually made up of Malays. And moving on. So if I were to actually summarize this whole presentation, I'm sorry for this being a bit wordy, but if I can actually maybe just go through it for you. Basically, Islamic governance as a framework for achieving net zero by 2050 and supporting a Build Back Better strategy is deeply integrated within the Malay Muslim monarchy philosophy. It merges principles of stewardship or Khalifa and environmental preservation with modern SDGs and strategic economic diversifications. So I also would like to echo the first speaker who actually said that we have actually, this earth is actually not ours. It's actually, it's stewardship. It's something that we are custodians to for future generations. And thus the first Islamic governance and environmental stewardship component is actually an approach anchored in the principles of Maqasid Sharia, which prioritizes protection of life, intellect, and environment. So stewardship means that humans as custodians, they are as custodians, not owners of nature. So through our Brunei National Climate Change Policy and a whole of nation approach, we are there to protect natural resources. And we also support the anti-waste and moderation policy, reducing single-use plastic and promotion of sustainable consumption. And along with the main bank in Brunei Islamic Bank of Brunei Darussalam, sustainability framework, we align this MIB framework ideology to the Maqasid Sharia, focusing on environmental protection and responsible entrepreneurship. So secondly, net zero by 2020. So this involves energy transition and forest preservation towards a low carbon and climate resilient economy. So the Brunei National Climate Change Policy strategies, which focuses on 10 key strategies, include reducing industrial emissions, expanding renewable energy, and enhancing carbon sinks, forest protection. For your information, we actually have 70,000 forest coverage in Brunei Darussalam, so we actually have a very good carbon sink in Brunei at the moment. And the Green Protocol, aimed at government premises, we focus on energy efficiency, water conservation, and plastic reduction, reducing the government's carbon footprint and carbon pricing. We do intend to actually enforce that in the future, but at the moment, just for information, Singapore is the only country which actually has a carbon tax in place. So this, we plan to introduce for industries emitting beyond a set threshold. So thirdly, Build Back Better strategy, it focuses on transforming the oil-dependent economy into a green or blue economy. So through this sustainable finance roadmap we actually have in place with a central bank for green projects, we encourage that. So Brunei Vision 2035 encourages green building, sustainable industrial growth, and economic diversification. And social and economic resilience, focusing on responsible entrepreneurship, ensuring transition to a greener economy, inclusive and sustainable for future generations. So, who are the main players in this whole of nation approach? So basically at the government level, obviously, we actually have the Brunei National Council on Climate Change, which oversees the Brunei National Climate Change Policy. We also have the Brunei Darussalam Central Bank, which manages the Sharia Financial Supervisory Board and promotes green financing. We also have the Bank Islam Brunei Darussalam, the major leading Islamic bank in Brunei, which is actually a leader in Islamic sustainable finance, and is also a UN Global Compact member. For those who are not aware of what a UN Global Compact member is, it's actually a company or organization that has committed to aligning its business strategies and expectations with 10 universal principles regarding human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. It's also the world's largest voluntary corporate sustainability initiative, aiming to advance broader UN goals, including the SDGs. Moving on, however, there are also government strengths and challenges in governance. So basically, the strength for our governance in Brunei is actually policy continuity and efficient decision-making and robust social contract. So we have extremely low political risk because we are an absolute monarchy. There are no political parties. And when we look at the challenges, there are restricted civil spaces. We are actually up to international security, I think basically from our Islamic law, and structural vulnerabilities, I suppose because we are very, very small. So, and we still have quite a reliance on hydrocarbons. So looking at public policy, again, we look towards the Brunei Vision 2035. So basically, the Brunei Vision 2035, we have three main goals here: educated and highly skilled people, high quality of life, dynamic and sustainable economy. So against those goals, we actually have aligned various policy milestones and progress. And this is actually aligned to also our MIB concept and also the Islamic concepts in place. So from the voluntary national review in 2023, and then we came up with the economic blueprint. And then we actually have the digital master plan in place as well. So we are then working towards diversification efforts and to target 2035. And our key priorities for 2024. So economic blueprint as well. This is actually maybe just a reflection of the previous slide. So again, these milestones, economic blueprint was in place because we do want to ensure sustainability in our economy. Digital master plan in terms of techno advances. Human capital, that's actually very important because that's also one of the main goals in our Brunei Vision 2035. Investment climate is actually critical in terms of diversification and sustainable finance because we do want to go through the green economy and the green financial instruments. And then we go on to diplomacy. Oh, did I go? Oh, sorry. Can I just skip the previous slide? I think I'll just go straight to diplomacy. And foreign policy principles are actually very critical to Brunei, being very, very small, we are also very dependent on membership of ASEAN. ASEAN is actually 11 members in Southeast Asia. So we are also based on pragmatic neutrality and non-interference. ASEAN centrality is also central to us because we are one of 10, and I think Singapore and Brunei, we are the two smallest states, nations in that entirety, and balancing major powers. So we speak of sustainability. The national climate change policy is actually central to that. So we focus on the 10 strategic goals for 2035 to balance infrastructure needs with greenhouse gas emissions. So we go for industrial emissions, forest cover, which we also have 70% is actually still cover for Brunei. And electric vehicles, again, as mentioned by previous esteemed speakers, we are trying to actually move on to electric vehicles so that we do not use fossil fuels. Renewable energy as well, so that's solar paneling, which we are trying to actually move as well. And then we have power management, not so much based on fossil fuels, hydrocarbons. Carbon pricing will actually be something we will think of in the future, as well as waste management and climate resilience, carbon inventory and awareness, and education. If I can just add on, in terms of climate resilience, I'm also Vice President of the Brunei Red Crescent. So we are actually very, very active in terms of disaster management and mitigation. So this is where it all ties up in the whole of nation approach. So Brunei Red Crescent as an auxiliary organization is also involved in efforts with the government to actually enhance and ensure that sustainability is actually achievable. When we speak about diplomacy and regional cooperation, so this is focuses on regional sustainability within the concept of ASEAN centrality. So ASEAN sustainability frameworks center on transitioning to a green circular economy via ASEAN taxonomy for sustainable finance, framework for circular economy, ASEAN framework on sustainable tourism development, ASEAN creative economic sustainability framework, ASEAN declaration on environmental sustainability, and as well as the ASEAN toolkit on sustainable consumption. So again, there is actually strength in the numbers of the ASEAN membership, where we work alongside with ASEAN, and then we also subscribe to the larger global requirements of sustainability. And speaking of green finance, which is also part of our MIB and Maqasid Sharia concepts as an Islamic country, this is where we mobilize private capital for climate resilience through the Sustainable Finance Roadmap 2025 to 2030. So here we look at ESG integration. We also look at the green and social sukuk, which are the green bonds, the ASEAN taxonomy, and also the Brunei National Climate Change Policy Alignment. So again, as you see, we also align everything up to this idea of sustainability through our ideology, our philosophy, our national philosophy. So in conclusion, if I can just state that stability is real but structurally contingent. So broadening the economic base for Brunei is actually critical for our sustainability in the future, so we don't really depend on hydrocarbons. And in terms of regional diplomacy, we sustain neutral pragmatism, but we also lean on ASEAN as a stable framework for our actions and our way forward. And in terms of policy implementation, technocratic reforms in data governance and sustainable finance must effectively convert into measurable foreign direct investment for our sustainability. And last but not least, climate action, decisively deliver on the BNCCP targets and NDC, so outcomes to future-proof the economy and align with global decarbonization, which I think we all subscribe to. So thank you very much, Dr. Wissam.
Yeah. you so much, Ms. Zoraida, for again this. Now we will watch the presentation from Prof. Ergen Kabler from the American University of Cyprus.
I don't think that we have him with us right now.
Global impact of oil revenue dependency for analyzing key indicators from leading energy producing countries. Research overview. This study investigates how energy production affects global energy prices. Dynamics focusing on rentier state theory using panel vector error correction model. The analysis examined 16 countries from 2001 to 2016, a period of extreme volatility in global energy markets. Key indicators analyzed oil price, public expenditures, exchange rate, control of corruption, and carbon emissions. The research hypothesis concentrated to the null hypothesis, where the global energy prices are not affected by domestic economic, institutional, national security, technological progress, and welfare issues of top 20 oil exporting countries. An alternative hypothesis, global energy prices are significantly related to domestic affairs of top 20 oil exporting countries. The period of analysis, as I mentioned, is covering the 2001 to 2016, and this period witnessed extraordinary fluctuations in oil price, geopolitical crisis, and supply-demand shocks, creating balance could influence global prices. In 2003 to 2008, China growth drives records oil price increases to $147 per barrel. 2008 to 2010, global financial crisis causes price collapse. And from 2014 to 2016, oil oversupply and OPEC conflicts trigger second major crash. The theoretical framework is, as I said, rentier state theory, where the country is relying on external rents, oil revenues, and develop structural dependency to this sector and not developing and enlarging other sectors. This will then affect governments, economical diversification and stability, and these internal factors may influence global oil prices. The oil revenue dependency by countries given in the figure. Figure shows estimated oil exports as percentage of GDP in 2018. More developed countries, United States, UK, are less dependent on energy revenues and less sensitive to price shocks, despite being large producers. The economics most dependent on oil, estimated oil exports as percentage of the GDP in 2018, as I said, is the Brunei 60%, Kuwait 46%, Libya 43%, Republic of Congo 42%, Saudi Arabia 32%, Singapore 31%, Algeria 25%, Kazakhstan 18%, Belarus 13%, Ivory Coast 11%, Netherlands 10%, Yemen 8%, Colombia and Belgium 7%, and India 4%. The model equation here, we used the global oil price as dependent variable and the gross domestic production, the economic growth, the carbon emissions, environmental impact, exchange rate, governmental expenditures, and control of corruptions as an explanatory independent variable. The countries investigated in this study is the United Kingdom, Oman, Angola, Algeria, Nigeria, Mexico, Norway, Kuwait, Brazil, United Arab Emirates, Iran, China, Canada, Saudi Arabia, Russia, United States. Countries excluded due to insufficient data availability, the Iraq, Kazakhstan, Qatar, and Libya. The methodology here, we use the panel vector error correction model. We capture the long-run equilibrium relationships, examine the short-run deviations, use panel data for 16 countries, as I mentioned, from 2001 to 2016. The descriptive statistics shows high volatility in oil price, non-normal distributions, presence of outliers, and exchange rate variable shows highest variability. The unit root results, all variables are non-stationary at level, and due to this reason, then we are using the first differentiation of the old data and also preferred to adopt the panel vector error correction model, which is mostly suitable for the panel data. The co-integration results shows the long-run relationship and 5 co-integrating vectors found, and variables move together over time as it is indicated in the table. The key findings, long-term effects, gross domestic productions and carbon emissions significantly affects oil price and government spending in long-term analysis, and control of corruption. All variables strongly influence corruption control, emerge as most affected variables, and exchange rates and public spending. Weaker and generally insignificant effects, often statistically insignificant, observed, and the short-term versus long-term dynamics. The short-term effects, limited effects observed, independent variables, generally have weak impact on dependent variables in short term. No significant short-term effects for most variables, including oil price, exchange rate, government expenditures, and carbon emissions observed. Long-term effects, structural and institutional conditions influential, and GDP and carbon emissions significantly affects the oil price. All variables strongly influence corruption control, highlighting government's fragility and fundamental problems. The policy implications, the economic diversification, sustainable growth cannot be based solely on oil. Diversification in production and development of other sectors needed for robust economic structure. The environmental investment, reduce carbon emissions, and encourage environmental friendly energies is desired. Increased renewable energy investment to alleviate energy crisis is demanded also. Government reforms, increasing governmental oversight to prevent corruption, improving institutional quality decisions for clean energy resources and oil pricing is also desired and demanded. Human capital, direct oil revenues to education is required, healthcare and research and development for creating environmental for sustainable long-term growth is demanded. Short-term policy recommendations, main macroeconomic stabilities, make necessary adjustment to maintain stability against sudden shocks. Direct revenues strategically channel oil revenues to increase production diversity rather than cover short-term budget deficit. Combat corruption, increase measures to effectively combat corruption while increasing transparent in revenue and taxes, and strengthening reserves. Central bank speculative pressure for exchange rate fluctuations. Implementation socio-economical measures counter volatility in energy prices through subsidies and support programs is desired. The long-term policy recommendations for reducing oil dependency support diverse sectors in production, implement product diversification, and reduce excess oil dependency. For encourage environmentally friendly technologies and increase renewable energy investment for enlarging much more clean and environmental friendly sustainable economical activities. Strengthening governance, increase oversight mechanism to prevent corruption, establish strong meritocratic governance for proper enforcement of law, ensure fiscal discipline, develop balanced budget plans for sustainable economy, which is much more this for becoming more developed and enlarging the welfare in the economy. The conclusion, oil prices are not driven solely by external global shocks. They are also shaped by internal economic, political, and environmental conditions in oil exporting countries, and entire dependency creates structural weakness, over-reliance on oil revenues, or underdevelopment of other sectors, increased vulnerability to price volatility, a government and institutional fragility is observed. Institutional quality is the key constant. Weak corruption control limits long-term stability and sustainable growth, unfortunately. The policy recommendations can be given. Economic diversification is a required essential. Growth cannot rely on only oil sector and oil revenues. It should be enlarged and increased to the other sectors for becoming more independent in other sectors, in agriculture, in services, and in other industrial sectors. Strengthening governance is required for improving corruption control, and institutions is critical for stability. Investment in sustainability, expanding environmental friendly production for low carbon emissions, and transitions for supporting long-term resilience, and shifting the long-term strategies for temporarily oil revenue booms are not sufficient for sustainable development. Thank you. This was my presentation. I wish all other participants good luck and wish you the best.
Yeah, thanks to Prof. Ergin for the interesting presentation. And I would like to thank again all the speakers for their interesting sharings. And I'm handing over the session to Ms. Michelle and the team for moderating the Q&A session.
Thank you. And thank you so much to our audience today. We haven't had such an engaged audience in a while. We always have a great audience, but today has just been on fire. So thank you for all of your questions, comments, your locations. I want to give a special shout out before we start with the Q&A. Number one, to Dr. Wissam. I know that he has brought us all together today. He has secured the speakers, the global ambassadors of sustainability has just done such a phenomenal job in getting the word out and offering this particular session that will be one of 12 parts, and we want everybody to get the full fellowship in the end. So stay tuned for the QR code that will go up. That will provide you with a certificate for today, but if you do all 12, then you'll get the full certification. I also want to thank our team who is out there. You probably see Hajra, who has been asking for questions and putting all of the questions in our document. Jane, who's also with us, Isa, Natasha, and many other team members who really give heart and soul into helping to provide some of the background work to make this all happen. So we will dive in. I know that because of internet connectivity, we've lost quite a few of the different speakers, but we'll dive right in because I know I have some great speakers for you, or some great questions for you, Ida. And the first question, I'll just jump in with Dr. Indira Bunik, who has been with us. She's from Switzerland, probably one of the first programs Dr. Wissam and the Global Ambassadors of Sustainability and Global Green Chamber ever did. Dr. Indira Bunik has been with us. So she asks, transport is one of the most stubborn contributors to urban carbon emissions, and policy solutions often look elegant on paper but fall in implementation. What is the most underrated barrier to sustainable transport transition that policy documents rarely acknowledge?
Thanks, Michelle. I think that's a very, very good question, and something that I've actually been battling with because I was Director of Transport Policy for my Ministry of Transport and Info Communications for a good 14 years. And I was right in the middle of actually trying to encourage electric vehicles. And we were actually into sort of like trying to limit carbon emissions, and smack bang in the middle of it. Yes, we actually have this problem in Brunei, especially because petrol is very cheap. So for ICE vehicles, internal combustion engines, and the vehicles, they are much cheaper than the EVs. And there is a 25% tax which actually comes into Brunei. So with all the policy papers that I have actually made on EVs and trying to transition Brunei towards that, we do have these structural limitations in place where the ICE vehicles are actually much cheaper compared to the EVs. But then I think the most underrated barrier is actually mindset. We all have to buy into this idea of the world is actually ours. It's not just Brunei's. It's actually the rest of the world, and we all have to play a part in doing what we can to reduce these carbon emissions for our future generations. So what little that we can do, we should do it. And speaking from an Islamic perspective as well, this is stewardship. We need to actually do something for the greater good. So in terms of the EVs, I mean, transport, I do stand guilty for sort of like, I do feel a responsibility towards reducing that. And we are trying, aligning ourselves to the Brunei National Climate Change Policy, which deals with emissions as well. But then we are moving as well now towards EV adoption. So when I was director 5 years ago, we only had 23 vehicles, EVs on the road. And now today, I think we actually have 2,000 already. So the move is slow but sure. And it's also education. We need to educate people why we need to actually reduce these ICEs. But there's also an aspect of hard policy as well that needs to be implemented. For example, the population is actually very used to cheap petrol. So maybe increasing the price would actually do something to deter people and move people towards electric vehicle adoption. And we also need to bring those EV vehicle prices down as well, so that we can actually get actual buy-in from the public, because there's also that concept of affordability as well, and practicality, which we need to educate Bruneians with, and I think the rest of the world too. Thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Ida, and congratulations. I mean, it really is a testament to you to even be a part of that growing system from 23 to 2000. I mean, that is a huge testament to the work that you're doing. So thank you so very much. And I know that we have some more questions. I just also want to just make note, I see that we're at 205 comments. We've had so many people joining live today and making the comments and questions. Just as a snapshot of where people are joining from, we have Kabul, Afghanistan, UAE, Tunisia, Jakarta, Indonesia, Indianapolis, USA, Chile, Odessa, Ukraine, London, UK, quite a few people from Egypt, Malaysia, Switzerland, Ghana, quite a few people from UK, Cameroon, Morocco, Canada, Uganda, several from India and both, as well as Ethiopia, USA, Lebanon, Bangladesh, Ottawa, Canada, Nazawa, UAE, Santiago, Chile, Palestine, Uganda, Faisalabad, Pakistan, and many more. So thank you also for sharing your location. If you haven't done so, please do so. We just constantly like to see where everybody is joining. And our next question is from Strong Truth. And Strong asks, Ida, how can Islamic ethical frameworks encourage citizen and corporate participation in reducing carbon emissions?
That's actually a very good question as well, Michelle. But then I do go back to Maqasid Sharia. I do need to go back to that because when I learned this concept when I was doing my leadership program at university, it's this buy-in by everyone that the good of the world is actually on our shoulders, on each and every one of us. And we actually stress that Islamically as well, because we need to actually do things for the greater good. So again, when it comes to those emissions, I mean, in terms of even the public in Brunei, we actually have policies for, not allowing open burning. That is actually something that we adopt. It's actually a community thing, and it's actually you're eligible to sort of like fines and all that. We have actually made smoking in government offices illegal, and we also have in place this reforestation policy where we actually target 500,000 new trees to be planted by 2035. So again, I think what is behind all these things, I mean, these are all very good initiatives, but it's actually the buy-in that we actually need. And that buy-in requires education, awareness, and social integration, basically. I mean, everything looks good conceptually, but implementation is actually another thing. And as a policymaker, I actually did struggle with that very, very much. And it was, I put it on myself that actually I should just start educating people on what they need to do, because every little contribution matters. It makes a difference, and you have to believe in that. So when it comes to the climate change policy, I mean that's a different policy. But then here I am in Red Crescent as well, honoring it through disaster mitigation and resilience. And we also have that concept which we adopt. So this whole of nation approach is actually very, very critical. And it does need to be, something that we all carry on together. ES is economic, social, and this whole community approach is actually just so very critical to ensure that these sustainability targets can be achieved. And I do believe that they can be if we all unite. So that's my comment, actually.
Thank you so much, Ida. One of our teams down in South America, they're very much working on that social integration and combining it with the cultural integration as you brought into this. And I think it's so important of having even the different frameworks in different regions because of that social and cultural integration. So thank you. And I know that we have another great question from Abel Jimenez. So they ask, good governance typically involves reward systems to support new strategic directions. However, the transition from current operations to these outcomes often entails significant costs and challenges for both leaders and those impacted. As a cohort, what economic development programs can we create to support the standardization of sustainability OKRs?
What economic standards? Okay. I think going back to Brunei again, Michelle and Dr. Wissam, I think it's actually all there. It's within our ideology. It's actually within our climate change policy, which is very, 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 very wide and inclusive. And when you talk about rewards, I think that's actually where the spiritual concept, the spiritual concept of ideology comes in, because Brunei is actually, being an Islamic country, we do have this sort of like united spiritual approach to a lot of things. So not everything has to be rewarded per se. But then again, we do our best to actually implicate those spiritual concepts within our policies as well, even in the economic policies. I think a lot of our policies, actually all our policies, involve some Islamic element, because that is actually based our actual basis for governance as well. So a reward per se would not be, it's actually a 50-50 answer for me, not in terms of material. Sometimes it has to be in the spiritual sense that we actually do something, or we implement a policy because we believe in it, not necessarily offering a reward per se. But of course, we also need to show as policymakers that a policy will work, and well, they will actually question what's in it for me, and we do have to explain that to the public. So whatever it was, that depends on the policy, but then it's also that greater good that we also, that is, I think, the ultimate reward for everyone. I think that greater good for what we can do for Brunei to reduce our carbon footprint, to actually, preserve our carbon sink, and all those things that we can do for our future generations. I think that is the ultimate reward for everyone. I think, Michelle, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ida. I'm so glad that you're here with us answering these questions. I want to make note of the QR code that's up on the screen that allows everybody in today's session to receive a certificate for today's session. And then if you go through all of the quizzes and go through all 12 programs, you'll get a full Global Professional Fellowship certification as well. So we hope that you stay tuned for that. If somebody is not here live today, we want to encourage them, please share the video that comes in after this, because we want everybody, as many people as possible, to be able to go through this free program. We feel like this is so important. We have the most amazing experts sharing their knowledge and experiences with us. So please share with others so they can also receive the full certification. And I know that if possible, if you can just continue, be on the lookout. I know that because some of our speakers had to leave prematurely due to other obligations, or some people just lost their internet, that those questions, if you've asked, because we really honor those asking all of the questions, we have requested for all of our speakers to seek out those questions in the thread that you've been putting them in, and then being able to answer them even after the program. So don't think that just because they weren't able to be here, hopefully all of your questions will still be answered if we didn't get to them during this live session. So thank you again for providing those. And I know we are running out of time, so I am going to pass the baton over to Dr. Wissam. And again, thank you to our audience, thank you to our speakers, thank you to our team for your continuous help and support. Dr. Wissam.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. And again, thanks to all the guest speakers for their sharings and interesting facts and case studies being shared. And I would like to thank also the audience for their engagements. And I'm happy to see a lot of discussions and networking as well, where I believe that this will bring a lot of fruitful collaborations. So yeah, thank you so much. We'll see you next week in the second module. I hope that you can scan the QR code or fill in the form so that you can get the certificate, and also be able to achieve the certificate of the whole program of the fellowship as a recognition for your efforts. So thank you so much. Have a good time, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.